He fell in love with me without knowing I was the daughter of a billionaire. When I told him I didn't have money for school, he offered to drop his for me. But when he found out who I really was, he did something I didn't expect. Subscribe if you want more stories like this. Would you forgive? Write in the comments where you're watching from. My name is Maya. At least that's what I told him. But if you had read the Forbes list my family appears on, you'd know me as Amira Carter, the Carters, the kind of name that opens doors before you even knock, the kind of name that tastes like gold in certain mouths and burns like acid in others. But to him, I was just Maya, a girl in a borrowed hoodie and shoes worn at the soles. I worked in the campus library, shelved books, made $12 an hour, and lived in a cramped room with a rattling heater and a leaky window. He thought I was struggling. He never once pitied me. That's what made me fall in love. But I'm getting ahead of myself. When I was a little girl, I used to think wealth meant freedom. Private schools, ballet lessons, trips to the Maldives on a whim. But as I grew older, I realized wealth came with walls. Thick, soundproof, marble-plated walls that kept people out and secrets in. We didn't say, "I love you" in my house. We said, "That's a strategic partnership." We didn't hug, we signed deals. My father was a legend in corporate litigation. Cold as stone in court, even colder at the dinner table. My mother, she dressed like a magazine cover and carried herself like royalty. But she loved control more than she ever loved me. She scheduled my childhood, piano, Mandarin, fencing, elocution. The closest thing to affection was a proud nod when I received early admission to Yale Law. Not because of my dreams, but because it made her look good in front of her club friends. I had a credit limit most people would cry over, but I couldn't tell you the last time someone asked me how I felt and actually listened to the answer. So I rebelled. Quietly, without theatrics, I declined Yale. I enrolled instead at a smaller liberal arts college in New York City, a place with no name cachet and no board seats, a place where I could disappear, and I did. I rented a small room in Washington Heights. The walls were paper thin, and I could hear the woman next door fight with her boyfriend at least twice a week. The faucet in my bathroom dripped non-stop. I showered with flip-flops because the tiles were cracked and yellowed. But I was free in a way money never let me be. I took an alias, not too different from my real name, just enough to blur the edges, Maya. I chopped my hair short, dyed the ends copper, wore clothes from thrift stores and sneakers that had seen better years. I got a student job at the library. I told everyone I was paying my way through school. No one asked where I was from. No one mentioned Atlanta. No one looked at me with expectation or calculation. I loved it. For the first time in my life, I felt like I could exhale. I kept a journal, not the pink kind, with a lock like when I was 12, a plain leather-bound book that I wrote in every night before bed. I filled it with things I had never said out loud. Today a guy offered me the last blueberry muffin in line. I almost cried because no one's ever looked at me like I mattered before. I read a poem today in class about belonging. I didn't raise my hand, but every word made my chest hurt. No one knows who I am here, and it feels like the closest I've ever come to being real. Then came the day I met him. It was raining, not a romantic drizzle, but one of those downpours that drenched you to the bones in 30 seconds. I had forgotten my umbrella. Of course I had. I rushed into the nearest cafe, shaking out my curls, my hoodie dripping like a sponge. The bell above the door chimed, and someone behind the counter glanced up. "Rough one, huh?" he said, smiling. He was tall, taller than me, which wasn't saying much, but enough to notice. Warm brown skin, hair tied back in a loose puff, and eyes that looked like they'd seen too much and still chose kindness anyway. He wiped down the counter and offered me a napkin. "That hoodie's seen some things," he joked. "Your coffee better be good enough to make this worth it," I fired back, teeth chattering. He grinned. "Best in the neighborhood. First one's on me." I blinked. "Really? Really?" he said. "But you have to tell me your name." "Maya." He extended a hand over the counter. "Cade." That was it. No sparks, no strings, just a paper cup with my name written in black marker and a smile I couldn't stop thinking about for the rest of the week. I found myself going back. Not because of the coffee, though it was good, but because Cade remembered my name. He asked how my classes were going. He told me about the new poetry slam happening down the street. He teased me about my constant rereads of Baldwin and Morrison. He made me laugh when everything else in life felt like performance. The way he looked at me, like I wasn't trying to be anyone but myself, was terrifying and addictive. He didn't know that I owned the building 3 blocks over, or that my parents had donated $500,000 to the college I now attended, under a fake scholarship name. He didn't ask. He didn't assume. He just listened. We talked for hours one night after his shift about books, about identity, about growing up black in a world that expects you to be grateful just for surviving. I told him my mother used to hire a stylist to dress me for Sunday brunches with judges and politicians. He told me his mom used to skip meals so he could eat enough to get through middle school. We were both shaped by extremes, but he never once let mine become a barrier. And I loved him for that. I started walking slower past the coffee shop, hoping to run into him. He'd wave from behind the bar, mouth 1 second, and sneak me free pastries he accidentally overbaked. I told myself it was harmless, this game I played, that if he really saw me, Amira Carter, daughter of Luther and Darlene Carter, worth $180 million in family holdings, he would treat me differently. He would hesitate. He would calculate. And I didn't want that. I wanted to know if someone could love me for me. Not for my last name, not for my lineage, just me. So I let the lie stretch. I never meant it to go on for months. But with every story he told me, every poem he shared, every sunset walk through the city, we became something too rare to risk. When he held my hand the first time, I felt it like a thunderclap. No one had ever touched me with reverence before, not like that. Not as if I was something fragile and sacred at once. He didn't ask where I lived, he didn't pry, he never demanded explanations. He just wanted to be near me. And I wanted everything with him, which is why one night, curled up under a thrifted quilt in my tiny room with the heat barely on, I looked at the cracked ceiling and whispered out loud, how do I tell someone the truth when the lie is the only thing that gave me freedom? The next morning, I opened my journal and wrote, he deserves to know the real me, and if he walks away, maybe I'll finally understand what love really costs. And just like that, the clock started ticking. I didn't know then what would happen. I didn't know what his face would look like when he found out. I didn't know how much I would cry or how deeply it would cut. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Cade had already passed every test that mattered. and soon it would be my turn. I never knew silence could feel so loud. When Cade and I walked together through the city, sometimes neither of us said a word for blocks, yet every second throbbed with meaning. He didn't fill space just to hear himself talk. He let the world speak for itself. The rhythm of our steps, the honk of distant taxis, the wind lifting his hair. I had known polished boys with degrees from Harvard and ream Rolexes gifted at 17, who could talk for hours and never say anything real. Cade could speak a single sentence and make my chest ache for days. Our first date wasn't supposed to be a date. He had 2 tickets to an open mic night at a bookstore downtown. Nothing fancy, he said, rubbing the back of his neck. Just some poets yelling about pain and coffee addiction. Thought you'd like it. I did. The room smelled like incense and old pages. The lights were dim. People wore their pain like armor and threw it across the mic like liberation. One girl read a piece about being invisible in her own family, and I had to bite the inside of my cheek to stop from crying. Cade noticed. He didn't say anything, just reached over and let his fingers brush mine. That small gesture cracked something open inside me. Afterward, we shared a slice of greasy pizza from a corner shop and walked 2 miles in the wrong direction because we were too caught up talking about Toni Morrison and James Baldwin. I told him I'd always wanted to write a novel, but never had the courage. He said, I bet you've got chapters living in your bones. I laughed, too loudly, too freely, every moment with him stripped away another layer I had worn all my life. My pedigree, my polish, my presentation, they all meant nothing when he looked at me like that, like I was already enough. Cade lived in a walk-up apartment with chipped paint and a leaky faucet he kept meaning to fix. He didn't complain. He played Miles Davis on an old record player and wrote on napkins when he ran out of notebooks. His desk was a chaotic mess of loose pages, dog-eared books, and coffee mugs with dried rings at the bottom. I loved every inch of his world. He never rushed me, never asked why I didn't invite him to my place. I made excuses. Roommates, small space, kind of a mess. He just nodded and said, when you're ready. I wasn't. Not because of fear, but because I didn't want to ruin it. He told me about his mother, who worked double shifts at a nursing home and raised him alone, about how he once sold his guitar to help her pay for surgery, about how he still writes her letters by hand every Sunday. I asked him once why he didn't just get a better job. He was smart, resourceful, a natural leader. He shrugged and said, better doesn't always mean happier. This way, I still have time to write. That's the dream, isn't it? Doing what you love. It hit me like confession. Here was someone who lived with intention, with integrity. He wasn't chasing status. He was building soul. And I was lying to him every day. Sometimes the guilt hit me in waves, unexpected, merciless. Like when he bought me a scarf for my birthday. It was second-hand, a little frayed at the ends. He said it reminded him of the sunsets we watched near the pier. I almost told him then. The truth burned at my throat. But he looked so proud, so gentle. I swallowed it down and thanked him like he had given me the moon. One rainy Thursday, I got an email from the university's billing office. It wasn't real. It was part of the cover story my father had arranged to make my alias look legitimate. Still, it gave me an idea, a dangerous one. That night, over tea in my apartment, I sighed heavily and said, I might have to take a semester off. They're raising tuition again and I can't cover it this time. Cade's jaw tensed. He didn't ask for details. He didn't question why. He just said, "What do you need?" I hesitated. "Nothing. I'll figure it out." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I could pick up another shift. Maybe work weekends too. It won't be much, but I can help." I looked at him stunned. "You'd do that for me?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Of course I would. You matter." No one had ever said that to me before. Not without an agenda, not without strings. Just a simple truth, laid bare like sunlight. I almost told him right then. Almost broke the whole illusion, but I couldn't, not yet. The next few days were a blur. Cade filled out applications for delivery work, offered to tutor underclassmen in literature, even tried to fix a broken espresso machine at the cafe to get a raise. He never asked me again if I needed help. He just showed up, quietly, steadily, like a pillar I never asked for, but desperately needed. One night, he brought me dinner in a takeout box and read me the first chapter of the novel he'd been working on. It was raw, poetic, and so deeply human I could barely breathe. "You think it's any good?" he asked afterward, rubbing his hands nervously. "It's beautiful," I whispered. "You're going to change people with this." He looked down, embarrassed. "Nah, I just want to tell the truth." The irony nearly knocked me over. He lived truth, breathed it, built his world around it, and I wore a lie like perfume. I started writing letters to him in my journal, words I couldn't say aloud, confessions, apologies, wishes. "I'm sorry I didn't trust you enough to tell you who I am. If I could go back, I'd still fall for you. Only this time, I'd fall honestly. You make me believe that love doesn't need armor." By now, I knew. It wasn't a crush. It wasn't some fleeting college infatuation. I loved him, fully, completely, and he deserved the truth. So I planned it. Our 1-year anniversary was coming up. I would take him to dinner. Not just any place, but the most iconic restaurant in Manhattan. One my family had owned for decades. I would arrive as myself, Amira Carter, no hoodies, no cheap shoes, just the woman I was, unmasked. I imagined his face when he walked in and saw who I really was. I rehearsed the conversation 1,000 times. I prayed he'd understand, that he'd see past the lie and find the girl who loved him so fiercely she risked everything to know his heart. But no matter how many ways I turned it over in my mind, one truth remained. I had tested his love. And now it was my turn to be tested. The night before the dinner, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my room, staring at the reflection in the cracked mirror. I didn't recognize myself. Not because I looked different, but because for the first time I felt whole. Cade had given me that. Not through gifts, not through promises, but by seeing the invisible parts of me and calling them beautiful. And if I lost him after tomorrow, at least I'd know I had been loved the right way, at least once, and that I hoped would be enough. I arrived early. The restaurant was already gleaming like a diamond box lit from within. The kind of place that whispered wealth through its polished marble floors and spoke fluent exclusivity in the way its waiters carried themselves, upright, crisp, nearly invisible. I'd been here before, of course, countless times, always as the daughter of one of the owners. Never like this, never as someone who feared the truth more than anything. Tonight I wore a navy silk dress I hadn't touched in a year. My curls were pulled into a neat twist at the back of my head, my heels clicking softly on the familiar floors as I crossed the lobby. People turned. Some recognized me. Others just sensed I belonged to the architecture. I hated it. every second of it. I missed the hoodie, the sneakers, the comfort of anonymity. But this was the moment I owed him, the real me, no masks. The maitre d' greeted me by name, of course. "Miss Carter, your table is ready." I winced, even as I nodded. The name sounded louder than it ever had. I took my seat near the window, hands folded tightly on my lap, heart punching like a fist in my chest. He was 5 minutes late, then 10. I told myself he probably stopped to fix his hair, or maybe he got caught on the train. Still, I began to sweat. When he finally walked in, I felt my breath catch. He wore his usual black pants, button-up shirt, sleeves rolled to the forearms, no tie, a bouquet of wildflowers in his hand, a modest, hand-picked thing with more sincerity than any florist could sell. The host stopped him at the door. "I'm here for a reservation under Maya," he said, hesitating. The host squinted. "We don't have a Maya on the list, sir." Cade frowned, lifting the flowers slightly, like some kind of peace offering. "She told me she had something planned. Maybe it's under another name." The host glanced toward me then, and recognition dawned on his face. "Oh," he said, voice shifting. "You must be here for Miss Carter." Cade's head snapped in my direction. He froze. I stood up, trying to smile, my heart plummeting. "Hey," I said softly. He didn't move at first. Then slowly, he walked over, face unreadable, posture stiff. He placed the flowers on the table, like he didn't know what to do with his hands anymore. "Carter?" he said, voice low. "As in, Carter Carter?" I nodded. He looked around at the chandeliers, the men in custom-tailored suits, the waiters hovering in perfect synchronization, then at me. "Who are you?" "I'm me," I whispered. "I swear I am." He sat slowly, like his legs didn't quite trust the floor. "You lied to me." "I didn't lie. I omitted." He gave a hollow laugh. "That's the kind of word rich people use when they don't want to say lie." I flinched. "I never meant to hurt you." "Then what did you mean to do, Maya? Or is that not even your name?" "It's my nickname. My real name is Amira. Amira Carter." He leaned back, blinking hard. Jesus, a waiter approached, but neither of us touched the menus. I tried to speak, but the words tangled in my throat. "I had to know," I said, finally. "I had to know if someone could love me without the name, without the money, without the walls. So you tested me." It wasn't a test at first. I just wanted to be seen, for once. And then I met you and everything changed. Cade's jaw tightened. "You let me work extra shifts, let me stress about your tuition. I was ready to give up nights of sleep to keep you in school. And you sat there, watching me sweat, like it was some kind of social experiment. It wasn't like that." "Then what was it?" "It was survival," I said, my voice trembling. "All my life, I've been someone people want to use, impress, conquer. No one's ever loved me for me. You did. And I couldn't risk losing that, even if it meant living inside a lie." He exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "You should have told me the truth when it mattered. You looked me in the eye and let me believe we were equals." "We were," I said. "No," he shot back, eyes flashing. "We weren't. You had power I didn't. Information I didn't. That's not love, Amira. That's control." I swallowed the lump in my throat. Then I failed. I didn't mean to, but I did. He didn't say anything for a while, just stared at the white linen tablecloth, like it held answers. His hands were clenched on his lap. "I don't know what's real anymore," he muttered. "This," I whispered, "my feelings for you, that's real." He finally looked at me. His eyes weren't angry now, just wounded, tired. I need time, he said. My heart dropped. Are you leaving? I don't know what I'm doing. I can't breathe in here. He stood. I didn't reach for him. I couldn't. He paused before walking away, voice lower than I'd ever heard it. I loved you, the way you were, or the way I thought you were. I don't know if I can love a version of you I don't recognize. And then he was gone. I stayed seated, frozen. The waiter came by again, offered water. I shook my head. Around me, the soft clatter of plates and forks continued. People dined, laughed, toasted glasses of champagne. But for me, the world had stopped. I stared at the empty seat across from me, the flowers wilting beside the untouched silverware. My phone buzzed, my mother. I let it ring. When I got home, she was waiting. She always was. So, she asked, not looking up from her tablet. Did the boy pass your little experiment? I didn't answer. She glanced up then. I told you, you can't mix oil and water. He doesn't belong in our world. Maybe I don't either, I murmured. She snorted. Oh, please, don't be dramatic. You're Carter. I walked past her, up the stairs, into my room, shut the door. The silence pressed in like punishment. I pulled out my journal, flipped to a fresh page. My hands shook as I wrote. He walked away, and I can't blame him. I gave him my heart in disguise. And now I don't know if he'll ever trust the girl underneath. The pages blurred. I had everything, and I had nothing, because he was gone. And I had no one to blame but myself. A week passed. 7 days of silence, so thick it felt like smoke in my lungs. I didn't hear from him. Not a call, not a text, not a knock at my door. I scrolled through our old messages until the screen blurred, memorized his voice in my head, and wondered what he was doing every hour that ticked by. I still went to class, still smiled when classmates said hi, still worked my hours in the library, scanning barcodes and stacking books. But inside, I felt like someone had cracked me open and left me hollow. My mother, ever the voice of ruthless logic, said, You dodged a bullet. Amira, men like him are distractions, not partners. She didn't understand. She never had. She spoke of men in categories, investors, allies, liabilities. Cade wasn't a liability. He was my home. I walked through the city like a ghost, retracing our steps, bookstores, coffee shops, that park bench where we once shared fries and a milkshake. Everything reminded me of him, but he wasn't anywhere. The restaurant had taken down our reservation plaque by now. The wildflowers he brought had long wilted in a vase on my desk. Still, I couldn't throw them out. I thought about writing him, an apology, a confession, something raw, but I knew words wouldn't be enough. Not after what I'd taken from him. He gave me his full heart, and I had handed him a mirror made of smoke. The 8th day came like a whisper. I left class early. The clouds were hanging low and grey, the kind that threatened rain but never followed through. I walked aimlessly until my legs hurt, then took the long way home through the quieter side streets. And there he was, sitting on a bench outside the coffee shop where we first met. Hoodie pulled over his head, a notebook balanced on one knee, a pen tapping against his thumb in thought. I froze. He didn't see me at first. He was too busy scribbling something. His lips moved slightly, silently reading the lines back to himself. I stood there like a fool, heart racing, afraid to breathe too loud. Then he looked up. Our eyes met. He didn't smile, but he didn't look away either. I walked over. Hey, I said softly. He nodded once. Hey. I didn't know if I'd ever see you here again. Neither did I, he said. But the coffee's still decent. I sat down next to him, not too close. I didn't want to assume anything. For a while, we just watched the cars pass by, headlights glinting on damp asphalt. I've been writing, he said finally, lifting the notebook. I figured. He turned it toward me. The top of the page read, Chapter 1. Underneath it, in neat handwriting, to the girl who shared her name to find herself. I swallowed hard. You're still writing the novel? I whispered. He nodded. Yeah, you inspired the real version. I turned to him slowly. Does that mean you forgive me? He exhaled, leaning back. You lied, Maya. You kept something from me that I never would have kept from you. I know. And it hurt. A lot. I know that too. He looked at me then. Really looked. Not with anger, not with judgment, but with that same gaze that had undone me so many times before. But I also know why you did it, he said. You weren't trying to hurt me. You were trying to protect something that never felt real before. I blinked, throat tight. I came from nothing, he said. But I never felt invisible the way you did. You had everything and still had to prove your worth. That's heavy. Tears stung my eyes. He reached into his bag and pulled out a folded sheet of paper, handed it to me. I opened it. It was a letter. I don't love Amira Carter, it read. I love the girl who let me dream again, the one who listened, the one who believed in my stories, the one who didn't need to pretend to matter, because she already did. I covered my mouth, tears sliding down my cheeks. I don't want your money, he said quietly. I don't care about your name, but I do care that we start over. This time, honest. I nodded, unable to speak. He stood and offered me his hand. I took it. We walked side by side into the drizzle that had finally begun. The city washed clean around us, the air soft, forgiving. He didn't ask what kind of car I drove. I didn't ask how his job search was going. None of that mattered now. What mattered was this. He chose me, the real me, with all the truth, all the flaws, all the messy pieces I had tried so hard to hide, and I chose him. Not because he saved me, but because he saw me and loved me anyway. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe for more. I have got many more real, raw, and unforgettable tales coming your way. Check out the next video, and feel free to share this one with someone who needs to hear it.